We're talking with my friend Keith Andrew Spencer about killing Sunday school and resurrecting exciting family-based, arts-based, conversational, participatory, image-driven, and a whole lot of fun worship. Keith, what did you do and why did you do it? I know you're only 4 months into this little experiment in worship engineering, but what drove you to this point of trying to build parents and kids together in both learning and worship together?
To answer it, you really have to go back a dozen years. I mean, the Sunday school that I started with at Trinity was really one that was struggling with the profound changes that were going on in families' lives. The Sunday school of sitting around the small tables with one teacher and a handful of students was really giving way to the realities that families no longer had 3-4 hours on a Sunday morning to commit. And we struggled with that reality for a long time because our first response was, hey, you know, why don't we make Sunday school more exciting? So we changed up the opening and we brought some drama to the opening, really get the kids kind of pumped up. And that really didn't change. It changed the energy level, but didn't change the reality that the number of kids who were participating continued to decline. So we thought, okay, they really liked the opening. Maybe we could get more kids to stick around and participate if we changed up the whole way we did things. So we went to a homemade intergenerational model.
Why intergenerational?
What's that?
Why intergenerational?
Well, you know, I had thought for a long time that if we involve parents and grandparents or the adults in these kids' lives that were responsible for their faith development, that would get us more traction, that the more that the families were committing and involved, that the more likely that we'd see the kids on a regular basis. This came out of my doctorate of ministry project. We had to do contextual ed, about 400 hours at our home site, and I was primed and ready to go to an intergenerational model, and so we met for months and we put together this incredible program, and I was very proud of it. We had it set up so that large group and small group format. We began with a large group. We did this presentation of the Bible story, very interactive, very much modeled after the model that I would see during Renaissance fairs, where these people would tell these wonderful stories with props and puppets and just pulling people out from the audience and pulling them into the story. And that was really cool. The folks that were there just loved it. We had in small group, anyone could lead. We had special colored dots under the chairs, and we designed it in such a way that it didn't require preparation for small group. If a kid looked under their chair and they found a colored dot when we broke into small groups, they were the leader for the day.
So a 4-year-old could be the leader?
They really could. I mean, honestly, you know, an adult would kind of help them out a little bit, but a 4-year-old could. We designed the format that they could ask the key reflection questions about what they just saw in large group. And think about how empowering that would be for a 4-year-old that in a traditional church, kids are typically not seen, not heard. They're in the pews. They're coloring books. They're attending Sunday school while their parents either go to adult class or they go and get coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. So now we're making these kids really live into the ownership that they have in their baptism. We're telling the kids you're equal shareholders in this whole experience of church. But after about 2.5 years of this, we found that we were working against forces that no matter how interactive, intergenerational, no matter how cool we made Sunday school, no matter how much buy-in that the adults had, that we were running against this model that said, I've got an hour and a half Sunday morning. That's all I have. And so I'm going to choose between Sunday school and worship, And we found 90% of the families were choosing worship and just having the kids either in the nursery or sitting in the pew rather than Sunday school. The numbers dwindled to the point where we had 6 Sunday school teachers and 4 kids. Kept bouncing back and forth. So the intergenerational model seemed not to be working, so folks said, well, if we go back to the traditional model that we did a generation ago when the Sunday schools were all full, maybe it's we just haven't done the traditional model with enough gusto. So we let the group try the traditional model for a couple of years, and lo and behold, they had 6 teachers, 4 kids. Improv, intergenerational improv, again, and we're going to make it even greater than before. And we did half an hour worth of Bible stories and then a Q&A after it, talking about what the kids saw and talking about what it may mean for them. So instead of small group, we did kind of a Q&A with the kids because we wanted to streamline it. We wanted to make it simpler so that the amount of work for the participants every week creating these new dramas, these new puppet shows, these new experiences, that they weren't going to be killing themselves. We didn't want it to die because of the requirement for producing every week a brand new Sunday school from scratch. And for 6 months, it was magnificent. We were working our way through the Bible. We began in Genesis. We picked out ourselves all the stories, the life of David, Solomon. It was great. But after Christmas again, the same thing. The participants dwindled. The parents and kids stopped coming, but they were in worship. So we went back to the traditional model one last time.
This was over 12 years?
Over 12 years.
Okay.
So we'd go from intergenerational, dramatic, large group, small group, and then we'd go back to traditional, saying, okay, we had to convince ourselves that traditional Sunday school, at least at our congregation, had run its course. And in the end, it did. Last spring, I just pulled the plug. I just couldn't keep yo-yoing back and forth, and nothing we seemed to do had traction. It didn't matter if it was the traditional model with young, energetic teachers committed to these kids, or a very untraditional model of intergenerational, dramatic, large group, small group, highly interactive. It didn't matter what we tried. And over 12 years, we've tried everything. So in the spring, after some reflection, and I sat down with our core families with kids, the families that I thought might be interested in taking a risk with me, trying something completely different. And right before Easter, I talked about this idea. What happens if we took worship, where most of our parents were still bringing their kids, and the core elements of Sunday school, and we mixed in some interactive family faith formation, and we saw what the product of that hybrid would be? Wouldn't that be great if families were really only going to come to worship and they just weren't going to spend the time on Sunday school? What if we brought Sunday school into worship, taking the best of all we had learned over the last 12 years? Would they be willing to take that risk? And they did. They committed to it. And so on Easter, we tried it. On Easter, we said, let's do it for one special service, one big family service. We were expecting 25 people. We had some great little family interactive faith reflection projects during the service. What we did was we took a box and we put a whole bunch of innocuous things in it. We had a hairbrush and paper clips, and I had my old Boy Scout compass and all kinds of stuff like that. And we had each of the families take out one item from it, and they were going to tell us what that item could teach us about the resurrection, what that item could tell us about the Easter story. So, we had a few items, and they were thinking, it would be 25 people, 5, 6, 8 families. And 120 people showed up. had this whole service kind of planned out, and we had to modify it immediately on the fly. But here's the cool thing. The families just went nuts over it. One kid after another was coming up to the microphone. We had this line all the way down, and we just let the service go as long as it needed to go, even though we knew we had another service behind it, because the kids were up there and they were saying, well, this comb reminds us of Jesus' resurrection, and it was just amazing, these kind of creative things, and I can't tell you what that comb had to do. Powerful and wonderful. So, by the time the service was over, I sat down with our core families and said, well, what do you think? And to the family, they said, let's give this a try. And so we said, let's do a soft opening, because we know we're going to have to tinker with this and tweak this. This is just brand new. So we started it in the summer, and we knew what we'd learned over the 12 years was we had to be careful that we didn't have to spend all of our energy trying to create something new every week from scratch. So we reached out, we did a lot of research on the internet, and we did find that the Bible song product from Faith Inkubators was going to give us enough resources that we could spend our time focused each week on how we're going to do the drama, or focus each week on trying to be with the family, take our energy and allow our folks to enjoy their faith time and worship time with their kids, rather than having meeting after meeting of trying to plan on how to create this worship experience every week.
We're talking to Keith Andrew Spencer, and what's the name of your church? Trinity in?
Lutheran in Pembroke Pines, Florida.
Pembroke Pines.